내가 뭘 잘못했나? 그냥 다 끝내고 싶다. 그런 생각을 해요.
Before we begin, I just want to throw out some trigger warnings. As always, whenever we discuss darker topics and heavier topics on this channel, not everyone will be as comfortable hearing about them. That's okay, that's normal, it's nothing to be ashamed of. But we still need to dive into them to fully explore this topic, and I don't want anyone feeling uneasy. So please be warned that some of the topics we'll be touching upon include, but are not limited to, stalking, harassment and sexual harassment, bullying and cyberbullying, drug and alcohol use, abuse, and addiction, eating disorders, assault and sexual assault, death threats, self-harm, and suicide. Again, it's completely normal to not like hearing about or discussing these topics. I still appreciate you for checking out the video, but please click off if they make you feel any level of discomfort. Thank you. What's up, my little spirits? It's been a while. Sorry about that. I was in a bit of a slump and didn't really feel like working on content, but we're back. Like I said in my previous video, this will be my last video where I touch upon a more serious topic until maybe about the end of the year. K-pop itself is still fun for me, and I have a bunch of videos in the works such as the lore of the SM cinematic universe, discussing the discography of third generation girl groups, and I have another video about Stray Kids and how I think they have a unique quality that makes them, in my opinion, the best group in K-pop. Not to mention, I also need to catch up on my How Hairstyling Affects Stage Presence series. But talking about things such as how the industry works and how fans interact both with idols and each other is exhausting. Not to mention how much conflict it draws. And I want to step away from that, which brings us to this video and what I consider to be an important topic: how K-pop makes you miserable. In this video, I'm going to look at one individual in particular that goes by the online alias of Pruit, also as of recent, Star Platinum. If you watch content from K-tubers such as Everglowup, Nabicore, Taeju, Felt, etc., then you may have seen their comments. They usually consist of one of two types. The first is accusing several creators of actually being one person or having dozens of accounts. That or all the accounts are actually bots. Or they're the type of comments where they say that these creators actually hate K-pop, they want groups to disband, they're only using K-pop for clout, etc, etc, etc. While both of these narratives are demonstrably false in regards to the creators they pertain to, that doesn't stop people from believing them. The reason why I bring up Pruit in particular is because of how obsessed they are with this mission of slandering K-tubers. Whenever I comment on a K-tuber's video, short, or community post, there's a good chance that I'll come back a week later and find Pruit having left multiple replies to that. And I'll notice this pattern just doesn't only affect me. It's one thing to recognize an individual replying to you every once in a while, but this person consistently replies to pretty much every comment that I post, and also to comments posted by those in my K-pop social circles. I don't know how somebody has the energy, much less the time, to stalk and harass multiple people like this, and some K-tubers such as Nabicore and Taeju have actually spoken out about this across various social platforms.
So if you ever see a username on YouTube that looks like this, please block it, report it, or do anything in order to get this shit taken down. I have blocked this user like 40 times on my account, and they keep coming back. They keep getting back. All they do is just leave hate comments on everyone's channel. They accuse users of doing things, and I'm not surprised they sent me an email because my email is technically public information. It's under my basic info on my channel. This is the first time I've received an email from this user. And this is after I posted a community board post in which I called someone out for insulting my entire platform, community, and also lying about me in the comments, in which they say that I was trying to save myself because I created a slander post defending another hate train. And then they obviously ended off with, shame on you, loser. So please, if you see this person under anyone's comment sections, report these accounts because they are hate train bot accounts made by the same person, and it is infuriating.
But this hasn't stopped Pruit from this tirade. So that begs the question, what is it about K-pop that drives someone to this level of obsession? And yes, before people say that this isn't strictly a problem amongst K-pop stans, which I do agree with that, the intensity within the K-pop stan community feels as if it's 1,000,000 times that of the general pop music stan community. And that's pretty much a consistent theme in K-pop. You take any aspect from the general music industry, compare it to K-pop, and K-pop just amplifies everything. So let's dive into our first topic of interest. Online disinhibition. This is the phenomenon of one acting differently online compared to in person because of the anonymity that comes with online interactions. Experiencing this may lead one to behaving more primitively and less restrained. Popular Science, a magazine, had to remove the ability to comment anonymously because people were spreading false information and being aggressive towards each other. There are two types of disinhibition. Benign disinhibition is when people use their anonymity for good. The type that we're concerned with is toxic disinhibition, when people use their anonymity for evil or malicious purposes. Part of why I've always presented myself online as me, not behind a screen name or a fake profile, is because I know that it forces me to reconsider what I say before I say it. And yes, I am aware that this channel being called One Us For All and my profile picture is of the member Wanoon does make me sound like a bit of a hypocrite. But you all know that my main channel is nameless, my real name is Danny, and I've done plenty of videos on that channel where I have included my face, and there are still some that are public where I have the camera on. So I'm not trying to disguise myself or anything. You guys know who I am, what my name is, what I look like. It's just on this K-pop channel specifically, I'm using an alias as well as someone else's profile, but again, not trying to hide who I am. And yes, just because I take a couple of seconds to contemplate what I say, that doesn't mean that people will always agree with me, but it keeps me in check from saying something that I would regret. There have been plenty of times where I've wanted to go off on someone that's just ticking me off and call them every name in the book. But I want to represent myself well, so I take a second to remember that another person is on the other side of that screen and I don't want to hurt them. That safeguard is removed when one opts to be fully anonymous. Just like with disinhibition, there are various types of anonymity. The first level is visual anonymity. This is when one still displays identifying features such as their name, but features such as their physical likeness may be replaced with something else such as a photo of an idol or piece of visual art. People can tell who they're talking to, they just might not know what they look like. Going down another level is probably the one we're most familiar with, which is pseudonymity. One's username and or their avatar are indicative of their identity, such as things like if they enjoy K-pop or maybe where they're from. But they're not accurate reflections as to who the person actually is or what they look like. So you can still tell a decent amount about a person, but it's still difficult to figure out who they are. And the final level is full anonymity. Usernames are not helpful in identifying someone. Avatars are either not related to anything, too vague to pinpoint why someone's using it, or just left blank. And you basically have no intel on who a person is, even after interacting with them. We've seen people weaponize this level of anonymity, mainly in falsely accusing idols such as Woojin, Lucas, and Raven. As I mentioned earlier, this abuse of one's anonymity for nefarious purposes is called toxic disinhibition, and it can really lead to aggressive behaviors. A 2007 study conducted by Robin Kowalski and Susan Limber demonstrated middle school age students were more prone to engage in cyberbullying because of their anonymity. Over a decade and a half later, things have not changed. Websites have tried combating this to some extent, a very lame extent, but to no avail. On Twitter alone, I've seen people use pictures, GIFs, Morse code, and other methods of dubiously suggesting and even demanding that others end their lives. And it's hard when you have maybe one or two people wishing you ill, but what's worse than just being attacked online by a couple of people? When that snowballs and you have an entire avalanche rushing towards you. Nobody wants to feel like the world is against them. Because of this, the safer and more appealing route for people to take is to join in with the crowd. Even those that would disagree with the voices of the crowd either go along with the sweeping tides or silence themselves, so as not to drown in the currents. This leads to de-individuation. De-individuation is what happens when one believes that they can't or won't be identified, especially amongst a crowd. This removes their sense of accountability as they don't fear the possibility of retribution for their actions. This sensation results in one being more likely to engage in risky, delinquent, and/or aggressive behavior. And when this happens in a group, the norms are set by the group. Having more people both increases one's own anonymity and mitigates the repercussions, as now the responsibility and blame is distributed amongst more people. There have actually been studies on this from at least 1896 conducted by Gustave Le Bon. Le Bon defined the crowd as its own organism, lacking the identities of the individuals that make it up. The crowd contains a hive mind that coerces all of its cells, being the people that make up the crowd, into sticking to the status quo out of fear of retaliation for deviating from it. Le Bon's theories have more modern conceptualization about a century later by Philip Zimbardo. However, the team of Riker, Spears, and Postums found these conclusions to be lacking and developed the SIDE model. SIDE stands for Social Identity Model of De-individuation Effects. One of the benefits of the SIDE model is that it could better account for online anonymity, as you really couldn't achieve that in the 1800s or 1900s. This updated model proposed that one possesses two identities, that of the crowd and that of their own person and being. With the internet, it's so much easier to maintain your own opinions and beliefs while hopping on the hate bandwagons and cancel party trains that permeate online spaces, because nobody has to know that it's you. You could fully believe in one thing while discussing the other, either to receive your own attention and clout, or to direct the aim onto another person. I want to take a quick pause here to recap. I've talked about how being online and using anonymity can lead to one feeling invincible, especially if you're amongst a crowd looking at a situation with the same mindset as yours. It creates this illusion that nobody can touch you. With Pruit, we've seen them abuse their full anonymity to engage in toxic disinhibition. Pruit could very well not be their name. It's obviously not their full name, and Star Platinum is clearly an alias. They have no identifying information on their channels. The 5 that they've created, that at least I know of, being Pruit versions 1 through 4 and Star Platinum. And they have a blank avatar as their profile picture. So we can see what temptations arise from believing that nobody can identify you. And before I move on to diving further into why I think they may have a cause to act this way, basically what their initial motives were and not just the environment that's enabled their behavior, I want to discuss a situation that hits close to home for me and when people abused their mob mentality and people suffered because of it. As some of you may know, I'm from Boston in the United States, and about an hour north of me is a town called Salem. Salem is best known for an era from the year 1692. During the wintertime, so January, a lot of girls in the town had quote-unquote mysteriously become ill. In other words, they had like a cold or something. But it was definitely a different time back then. The Christian ministers that had a lot of authority in that time period immediately jumped to the conclusion that it was witchcraft. From that point onward, people would be falsely accused of practicing witchcraft and dark magic. The accusers were typically young women around what in modern times would be considered middle school, high school, and college age. So think about maybe like 12 to 20-ish. And the accused were pretty much convicted without trial. There would technically be tests, I'm saying that word very loosely, to determine whether or not one was actually a witch, but they weren't based in science and were guaranteed to skew favorably in making the accused come off as guilty. Sound familiar? This feels ominously reminiscent of recent scandals in K-pop against idols such as Woojin, Lucas, and Raven. Between February through May of 1692, about 180 people were accused and 19 of them were sentenced to death. Given that the legal systems have proven that a lot of the falsely accused idols, including both Woojin and also Soojin, to be innocent from the accusations, I don't believe that the death penalty will be enacted anytime soon in response to these falsities. However, we don't need the courts to get involved to yield this outcome. Idols such as Jungkook, Sully, and Gohara have already taken their own lives. Although we'll never know for sure, it is speculated that this was caused by the extreme levels of bullying and harassment that they received from both the media and from toxic stans. This didn't happen very long ago, so it's not like we can say, oh, similar to the witch trials that happened centuries ago, that this is so far in the past. This happened within the past decade. Back to our main topic. What motivates people to act this way? We already touched upon garnering clout or avoiding backlash, but you could just as easily stay on the sidelines and avoid the drama altogether. My own personal theory is that the main contributing factor to this is boredom. Let's be honest, the last 3 years have been extremely difficult for all of us. Jobs lost, schools closed, friendships dissolved, and I don't think that anything could have prepared us for the COVID-19 pandemic. And the negative impacts have absolutely been displayed in full force amongst millennials, Generation Z, and Generation Alpha. When one's bored, they reach out for activities that will give them that burst of dopamine. Healthy options can include, but are not limited to, hanging out with friends, working out, listening to music, having a hobby, etc. But with so many venues, including gyms, being closed and supply chains being backed up, so many of these activities haven't been as feasible, especially in the midst of 2020 when we are all expected to stay at home, as we may have liked them to have been. And of course, there are unhealthy coping mechanisms to help with boredom, such as binge eating, alcohol consumption, drug use, both from recreational and medically prescribed drugs. And I'm not trying to undermine the severity of addictive substances or the struggles of living with addiction, nor am I saying that the sole reason for resorting to these substances is sheerly from boredom. The point I'm trying to get across is that boredom can lead down a variety of paths, both positive and negative. But given that a lot of the primarily affected groups are on the younger side, they may not have had the financial resources to indulge in any of these activities or fund them long term. So that leads to finding a more cost-effective outlet for said boredom, and that outlet being the internet. So many of these social media platforms, mainly Twitter, Reddit, TikTok, and YouTube, are free to use, excluding things such as subscriptions or memberships, things of that nature. This makes them easy to access as long as one has a device and an internet connection. Combine boredom with an underlying anger trying to vent itself by any method, and you have a recipe for disaster. A basic human desire is wanting to feel fulfilled and that your life has meaning. Everyone wants to feel important. What was happening over the last 3 years? We were bored at home, watching our lives seemingly waste away. A lot of people turned to K-pop for escapism. This fun and lively world of quirky music and colorful stages, and hundreds of perfect individuals branded out to be like demigods. Idols are supposed to be perfect, living a luxury lifestyle while making their dreams a reality, racking in tons of money on top of embodying these ethereal beauty standards. So not only do you have to struggle to keep your own life together, but you need to watch those of others thriving in a medium that you originally followed to forget your troubles. That just further compounds this hatred of your circumstances. And as is tradition in the same vein as the classic Greek tragedies, the easiest way to make yourself feel better is to make others feel worse, to watch them fall from grace as far as possible until they're on your level. We also need to account for age. I know that it's a stereotype to say that K-pop stans are all a bunch of middle school age kids, but with how a lot of stans behave, especially in an ageist manner, I can't blame people for thinking that way. Yes, I am turning 26 this year, and stans give me a lot of grief for how much older I am compared to all of the 12 to 17-year-olds that are in the community. But what they fail to realize is how much you grow and change as you get older. Not to mention that the brain doesn't fully develop until at least 25, and some studies show that it may not even be until one's 30. Even then, you're never too old to stop learning. With those experiences come wisdom, and the internet isn't helping by allowing people from different ages, developmental levels, and cognitive skills to interact unrestricted. I don't fully agree with the language used, but a Twitter account by the name of YKMAJ6 posted a tweet reading as follows. Remember in school when they had kids separated, honors classes, regular classes, and slow class? See, the problem with Twitter is they got us all on here together and we not supposed to be. I'm not a fan of calling classes for those that don't excel at academics for one reason or another, especially if it's due to a learning disability such as dyslexia or dyscalculia as being slow classes. But it still gets my point across that those of differing cognitive skills are separated so that they can learn at an appropriate pace and connect with those of a similar level of academic performance. Now, I want you to watch this TikTok by content creator ENIKKIG.
Mad. And my point is, a lot of you guys are shitty wives. I'm sorry.
The greatest crime of the internet is equalizing us across age and developmental stage. Don't get me wrong, there are some young people who have razor sharp analyses, and I tune into them because I am learning from them. But I think young people go through a loud and wrong stage, right? It's just part of growing up. And it used to not be that big of a deal because you were containing your own age group. We played with 10-year-olds when we were 10-year-olds. Teenagers hung out with teenagers. Early 20-somethings hung out with early 20-somethings, and so on. So while you're going through this very normal stage, it's contained within your age group, and you all are developing your analytical skills together. But the internet, particularly timelines and FYPs, are one big room. And so when you say something like this person who is consistently loud and wrong, and an older person comes in to like call you in, teach you, correct you, you think, oh, this is just a hater, right? Because we're all equal here. And while we're all equal in our humanity, some people have a level of learning and living that can be really helpful to your analysis, but you reject it because the internet makes you think that we're all equal players here in terms of expertise and analysis. And so people like this get platformed, right? And then they start to spout really dangerous things, and dangerous rhetoric in the hands of too many people can be turned into dangerous actions and laws and practices. But I feel like we're at a point of no return with people like her and the etc. of people like her. People are no longer teachable. You cannot be corrected because you see the person on the other side of the screen is just a hater and not someone who can actually contribute to your development.
I think they really articulate the point I'm trying to make much better than I ever could. I didn't start using social media platforms to connect with people outside of my hometown and age range until I was 19 and became a freshman in college. I was able to grow up with my own age group. I was only interacting with people that I knew in real life that were my peers. A lot of kids have been stripped of that opportunity. We see this stereotype of parents giving their children smartphones and tablets instead of bringing them to the park or playing a board game. And that robs them from forming human connections. Why go out and make friends when you have the entire world contained within a small screen in your pocket or your backpack? This naivete is further worsened by a lack of self-regulation. A 2012 study conducted by De Ritter looked into how those on the younger side of the age spectrum and or those that are not as far along in their formal education may have lower average self-regulation capacity. This refers to how well one is able to control their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, especially in adverse situations. When you have so many K-pop fans that are on the younger side, they may not be as capable in censoring themselves or acting in what would be deemed a civil and mature manner. Heck, I know that I definitely was not able to do so when I was 15, 16 years old. And when you couple this with a 2018 study conducted by Vogser, Singh, and Goritz, analyzing how well people can distinguish between reading a genuine argument versus someone that's just trolling, and we really have a problem here. I am always trying to advocate for K-pop stans learning to differentiate between someone hating on an idol and someone criticizing them. Criticism has a sense of logic behind it. I believe this for reasons X, Y, and Z. And those reasons also have to make sense. Saying, I don't think that blank should be an idol because they're ugly, talentless, and stupid isn't an argument. That's just flat out hate, plain simple. But if someone says, so-and-so wasn't ready to debut because their vocal technique isn't strong enough, they haven't honed their dancing skills, or their stage presence is weak and needs to be developed, they're laying out their rationale for thinking in a certain way, and that rationale is being portrayed in a logical manner. And we see this lack of comprehension a lot when looking at how people view K-tubers. I am constantly seeing tweets like, it's always the K-tubers, and just so much bashing on all content creators. A lot of what I see comes from people not being able to make that distinction between someone being hateful and someone just expressing criticism. Which brings us back to Pruit. Based on the frequency of Pruit/Star Platinum's comments all across KTube, it's obvious that they have way more time on their hands than they know what to do with. And when you're bored and have nothing to satisfy the desire to feel like your life is meaningful, you look for ways to find some sense of purpose. I believe that what happened is that they disagreed with some opinions by various K-tubers, and were not able to properly handle the negative reactions that they had. Hence why they accuse so many K-tubers of being antis and always bashing on K-pop idols and groups for clout. They would rather live in this echo chamber where everyone has the same mentality as them. Anyone else is obviously a quote-unquote hater. They want to feel like they have more power over their life than they do, because anyone that truly has full power over their life doesn't get bothered when a random person online gives a harmless opinion that differs from their own. So they resort to bullying, and in accordance with a 2013 study conducted by Michelle Wright, young adults feel more inclined to engage in cyberbullying and aggressive behavior when they feel that there won't be any consequences. Using an alias under the guise of full anonymity makes it feel as though nobody will be able to discover who they are, thus never being able to hold them accountable for their actions. And as we all know, it's only wrong if you get caught. So we have a culture where young people are roaming around the internet and interacting with those outside of their age range well before they develop skills such as the capacity to regulate their responses to opposing viewpoints. Pruit is the ultimate amalgamation of these factors combining into a toxic individual that's determined that their life's purpose would be to make others feel as miserable as they are in hopes of garnering some sense of contentness. And they're not the only ones resorting to primitive and vile means to make others feel small. One wrong step and suddenly you have entire fan bases flooding your comments and DMs insisting that you're a waste of oxygen and should end your life. But what does this say about society as a whole? I've spent a lot of time here disapproving of the actions of others, but that's almost like a way to absolve myself of the accountability I need to take for myself and my own actions. In putting this video together, I remembered what I was like when I first started off using more general social media platforms like Twitter. I was argumentative and would easily get frustrated with others that wouldn't see my point of view. Granted, I wasn't telling people to off themselves, even if we disagreed, because I have never seen having opposing opinions with another person as justification for seeing their life as being worthless. But I wasn't the matured person that I am today. Yes, I still lose my temper, it's normal. But it's the frequency and the extent that have really mellowed out over the years. I think that learning to interact with others in an appropriate manner online is a journey that everyone has to go through. I do think that said journey would be more productive if everyone remained within their age group, but that's clearly unavoidable at this point to hope for that. A big part of my development has been learning that I'm not above being corrected. Like I always say, I am open to criticism. Note that I said criticism. Criticism isn't telling me that I'm a weirdo loser with a flop channel that can't make thumbnails and should off myself. What am I learning from that? What are you accomplishing in doing that? Absolutely nothing. But in some instances, people have gone out of their way to approach me and go, "This is why I think what you said or did is wrong," or straight up that it is wrong if it's more objective than subjective. And here's what I think is a more accurate or maybe a better way of doing things, or just something of that nature. I found that when you approach people from a point of "I'm trying to help you," not only do you get through to them, but you have a better chance of actually getting them to see your perspective and maybe have a change of thought. Insulting someone just makes them defensive and even more likely to double down on what they're doing or saying, even if it's wrong, and even if sometimes they know it's wrong. But now you have gone to attack them, they're in defense mode, and it's so hard without any sense of humility for people to just admit fault and apologize for things. As difficult as it is to experience being called all sorts of names and being told that I should end my life, I somehow haven't given up on humanity yet. I believe that there's still good in others. I believe that behind the screen names and the profile pictures of their favorite idols, everyone online has real life friends, family, hopes, dreams, aspirations, and the desire to feel like they have a purpose in life. Unfortunately, the world has been pretty grim over the last few years. Things become more and more terrifying by the day, and people use the internet as their outlet to vent those frustrations. But this causes a lot of collateral damage. So yeah, I'm not convinced that every single person that I've had a negative interaction with is a terrible person. I just think that a lot of them haven't developed the necessary skills both to articulate themselves and know when not to get involved in certain situations. Recently, Twice's Chaeyoung has been getting cancelled for wearing a hakenkreuz, which is better known as a swastika. Some of my KTube friends immediately reached out to me to see if I was okay because they know that I am half Jewish on one side of my family. And I just told them that it didn't feel worth getting angry over. I think wearing the shirt, granted, was a dumb mistake on Chaeyoung's part, but I'm not going to go out of my way to cancel her when my real gripes are with whichever manufacturers and retailers believed that profiting off of a shirt like this was acceptable. That's who my real issue is, not with her for just a dumb fashion choice in my opinion. And hey, everyone is allowed to interpret and feel about the situation differently. Just because I personally didn't find it to be cause for me to go after her, hate her, bully her, etc., doesn't mean that other people aren't going to be more or less offended and have their own reactions. But yeah, after spending the last 2 years defending idols that have been falsely accused of various malicious acts, I'm no longer as bothered when someone tries saying that this idol can't sing or this idol isn't attractive. I know that I shouldn't be wasting my energy on futile strifes, and I need to make my anger expensive. And I feel like that's something that K-pop stans, especially being on the younger side, haven't fully conceptualized, is that not everything deserves the same level of anger and backlash from you. Eventually you need to reach a point in life where you need to prioritize your health, your happiness, your safety, and your sanity, and you just need to be able to let things go. So what if an idol said this? Whatever. I'm not going to let it bother me. So what if an idol wore this? Whatever. I have more pressing matters in my life to worry about. I really wish that I knew what the best way to end this video would be, but we're at the end of page 10, so let me just say this. If being online, especially in K-pop spaces, makes you so miserable that you feel the need to bully and harass others to feel better, take a break. I deleted all of my social media accounts in February of 2020 because I was recognizing that I was acting both childish and bitter online. I needed a break. So I stepped away from the internet, deleted pretty much all my social media accounts, didn't come back until late 2021, and I focused on things such as exercising, finding new hobbies, rediscovering old ones like drawing and designing. Ironically, this is what started me on my dive into K-pop. But I was pretty much just watching music videos and variety content during lockdown 2020, so I was blissfully unaware of the toxicity amongst K-pop stans. I wasn't interacting with them much aside from maybe YouTube comments here and there, but whenever you're looking at variety content or fan edits or compilations, typically the people watching that is restricted to that fan base, so you don't see these inter-fandom conflicts, and you don't realize what levels of just aggression and anger there are within K-pop just from doing that. So yeah, I got into K-pop, I got into more anime and such, so during 2020, 2021, when I took a break from the internet, I was just able to basically rediscover myself and think about who I want to be moving forward and how I want to present myself. So if you feel as though you're always angry, especially in K-pop related environments, step away from the computer and just do something else. Go outside, go for a walk, hang out with friends, read a book, just make it something where you don't need to interact with others online. And I want everyone to be able to take control of their lives. So, starting right now, you all know the drill. Make sure to drink plenty of water today. I love you all. Stay healthy, happy, and hydrated. And thank you for watching. Peace out.